As a member of the Commonwealth, Kenya played a major role in the First World War that started in 1914 and ended in 1918. Nearly 106 years later, the role of Kenyan fighters is yet to be documented. Our coast-based reporter Tobias Chanji was in Taita Taveta to trace some of these battlefields and tells us why they are important not only to historic sites but possible tourism sites.
Excerpts from Gorillas of Tsavo, authored by James Wilson, a distinguished historian, documents the First World War, vividly recounting events as though they happened yesterday. Kenya, and in particular Taita Taveta, contributed part of the African population that took part in the war, fighting and providing support troops in 21 countries. This building in Taveta playing a major role, as this is where the first bullet was fired at a German soldier by then British District Commissioner Hugh LaFontaine.
The DC for Taveta was a gentleman called Hugh LaFontaine. Hugh was very worried about this. He noted that there was a build-up of troops on the other side. And he'd posted a lot of his scouts and the East African police along the border just to see what was happening, with given very strict instructions that if you see any movement of Germans, retreat, come back.
On 14th August 1914, LaFontaine then dispatched a government administration scout, Luka Kirigisa of the Taveta tribe, on a reconnaissance mission to ascertain the state preparedness in the town of Moshi, just across the border in German East Africa. Luka reported back that he had seen armed German settlers parading like soldiers. Trouble was surely afoot.
On the 15th of August, the German troops started coming through, 200 men. The first casualty in the East African campaign was a young police cadet called Muremi Mwiti, we believe from Meru, and he paid for disobeying the DC's instruction of coming back. He tried to shoot at the Germans and paid the ultimate price.
Friedrich Brucker, a German soldier, became the first German casualty on 15th August 1914.
Hugh LaFontaine was looking out of these windows across the plains. If you could imagine, there was no trees here at all. It was open ground. And he saw the 200 Germans walking towards him. There was one gentleman on a horse. And he made the logical decision that if the man on the horse was probably the man in charge, and he had a .375 hunting rifle, and from this window he fired the second shot of the First World War in East Africa, and the person he shot at on the horse was a gentleman called Eric Brucker, who was a forestry officer in Moshi. And he was wounded in the stomach. He was as close as you could get in those days, medevac. The medevac point was behind a baobab tree, and he died in agony the following night.
The building, which was originally a police station before becoming an administration post, has been completely neglected by the authorities.
The building dates back, we believe, to about 1909. So it's got a good heritage to it. Once the Germans moved in here, it became Captain Schulz, who was the area commander for the Schutztruppe, the German forces. It became his headquarters. Von Lette-Vorbeck visited here on several occasions, and it also became the German hospital. And up until a few years ago, you could still see the remains of the painted Red Cross on the corrugated iron roof there. But it's my hope and my desire that the National Museums of Kenya will get their act together and do something to protect this building.
With British having lost Taveta and quite a substantial territory to Germans, a section was sent forward to set up an observation post at Maktau, which was 12 miles closer to the enemy from the Bura base, where slave traders camped to and from Kilimanjaro. Maktau is derived from the word Maktime, loosely meaning resting place.
In November, the British Indian Expeditionary Force B launched an attack on Tanga to try and defeat the Germans there. It was an absolutely abortive attack. It was one of the biggest military blunders and incompetent leadership on part of the British. The Germans were 800 men and the British, I think, were 15,000, and they were sent scurrying back onto the ships. But on those ships they had a lot of railway material, because the plan was that they suspected that if they took Tanga, the Germans would blow up the Tanga to Moshi railway line.
And of course that interesting feature will be airing part